So, motorcycles can give you some of the best experiences of your life. And if you've never ridden a motorcycle before, I would heavily recommend that you go try it out. But they can also give you some of the scariest experiences you will ever have. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video. We're going to give you 5 of the scariest things that can happen to a rider. But before we do, today's video is brought to you by our Patreon. So if you are a long-time viewer and you love motorcycles as much as we do, and you'd like to support us directly in what we do, then definitely go and check out our Patreon. The link is in the video description. You have 3 tiers to choose from, each of which will give you access to our exclusive Discord server. And thank you ever so much to all of our current patrons and future ones to come. So thank you. Let's jump into today's video. The wicked Kawasaki ZZR1400. For me, one of the best motorcycles ever made. She is absolutely amazing. We've got so much content around this motorcycle, it's crazy. But I mean, it's coming to that time of year now where the bikes are getting very dirty. Even if you just ride them for half an hour, the bikes get incredibly dirty. So yeah, she's desperate for a wash, as is the ZH2 as well, and probably my wife's Ninja 125 also. But yeah, it's coming to that time of year now where they're gritting the roads and it's a nightmare for riders like us. And she did struggle to start up earlier, so hopefully, fingers crossed, she does all right now. I've only been out for, I don't know, half an hour or so, but yeah, she started up just fine. But yeah, I'm already starting to feel my fingers tingle a little bit. And again, same as before, my glasses are fogging up. That's awesome. But yeah, guys, scary things that can happen on motorcycles. There are quite a number of scary things that can happen. Like falling down a hill backwards on a motorcycle isn't fun. And definitely let me know down in the comments some of the scariest things that have happened to you whilst riding a motorcycle, because I bet the list is endless. I mean, we came up with 5 for today's video, but I'm sure there's a lot more than that. But the very first thing, and this is perhaps the most obvious one, and if you are a fairly new rider, then you will experience this pretty quickly, and that is locking up the front tire, because it totally limits your control of the bike. Locking up the rear tire, you can control that fairly easily. Even if you're doing a power slide, you can control that fairly easily if it's happening from the rear tire. But as soon as you lock up the front tire, the dynamics of the motorcycle totally change, and that's why you end up seeing a lot of the time when people just jam on their front brakes, that the bike just dives to the ground and there's nothing that the rider can do about it. It's incredibly frustrating, and the thing is the front wheel is the one that's doing most of the stopping power when you're trying to slow down. So there's almost nothing you can do about it when it happens, because it all happens so quickly. You lose control of the motorcycle in a split second after your front wheel locks up, especially if you're going at relative speed. You don't even have to go that quick. If you're going over 20 miles an hour, maybe 25 miles an hour, and you lock up the front tire, good luck trying to control the bike. Now, in today's video, we are going to give you ways that you can avoid these scary things from happening, but just be aware that it can happen regardless of the tips that I'm going to give you today. But that's why a lot of the time, in fact all the time, I'm using only 2 fingers on the front brake. So here's the front brake here. I only use my index finger and my middle finger to apply the brake. Basically what you're looking to do is use the least amount of pressure possible, but you have enough force in just those 2 fingers to slow yourself down as much as you need to. And the opportunity that it gives you here is that it lets you do something that's known as preloading the front brake. So preloading the front brake is basically where you pull it in just a little bit to get the brake ready, and then when it actually comes time to slow down, you can just squeeze it gradually but quickly, and it will slow you down in a far more controlled manner than if you just grab your whole hand around the brake like that, as you see so many riders doing. And look, it's happened to me before. Literally, when I was 16 years old and I was riding my old 50cc scooter around, I did that. I actually jammed on all of my hand onto the front brake, and the scooter just dive bombed to the ground, and there was nothing I could have done about it. Bearing in mind that obviously this scooter didn't have ABS brakes or anything like that, no modern tech whatsoever. It was one of the cheapest scooters I could get hold of at the time. So yeah, if you have ABS, then it definitely helps. But yeah, it's still just a nightmare situation. And I mean, this does kind of relate to another one that we have a little bit later on in today's video. But if you're staying aware of everything that of all of your surroundings, what's happening in front of you, what's happening behind you, then most of the time you have a little bit of time to prepare before you have to really slow down hard, or before you have to make a tough maneuver. But yeah, definitely locking up the front brakes is definitely one of the scariest things, because there's nothing you can do about it. And you know me, I'm always championing control of the bike. If you have control of your motorcycle, then you will be absolutely fine. But in those situations, you cannot control it unless you're doing slow speeds, or unless you're an absolute pro. But yeah, I'm sure it's happened to the vast majority of us. So we've jammed on the front brake and the bike just crashes to the ground. Not a very nice experience, but after you've done it once, you'll know what it feels like when the front wheel locks up. So hopefully it's actually a good experience. And hey, even if the bike drops, but it stops you from crashing, then you've done pretty well. So the next scary thing on our list isn't actually something that is scary to you physically. It's actually scary to you on what happens to the bike. And that's finding a false neutral. It's a very, very concerning event when you so-called find a gear, but when you pull back the accelerator, nothing happens. And this only ever happened to me on the ZZR, funnily enough. It's never happened before on any other bike. I don't know why, because I'm pretty sure that you can find a false neutral on every motorcycle. But basically it's when the gears actually land in between each other. So there is no gear driving the rear wheel, driving the chain, the drive chain, then driving the rear wheel. And on the ZZR, because I've got a little gear indicator up in the top there, when you have any gear engaged, it will tell you what that gear is. And when you have neutral, it has an N in there, as you'd expect. But when you find a false neutral, it's blank. That area is blank. There's nothing in it. And I mean, luckily it's not like a car where if you jam a car into gear, you'll probably destroy the gearbox, because it's a selector gearbox. You can do block shifting and things like that. That's why whenever you see people going from 5th to 1st or something like that, and they're doing 80 odd mile an hour, it just destroys the gearbox, destroys the transmission. But on a motorcycle you can't do that because it's sequential. So you have the opportunity to either kick it up into a gear or down into a gear. You just got to pull in the clutch again. And sometimes I don't know exactly the science or the engineering behind this, how this happens, but Motorcyclist magazine has got a really good video on false neutrals, which I'll leave on the top corner for you to watch afterwards if you want to. Fantastic channel, definitely go and subscribe to them. But it could also be something to do with the clutch as well. So if the clutch hasn't quite released properly when you try to change gears, it might just have enough to put it into a false neutral. But yeah, pretty scary thing to happen if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Because if it's anything like the clips that you see of drivers in cars when they mishandle gearing, mishandle their transmissions, it just destroys the gearbox totally. But luckily, on a motorcycle in most cases, it doesn't do any damage whatsoever, which is absolutely fantastic. So the next one on our list, again, is a fairly common thing that can happen to a rider, especially when they get a bit overconfident. And that is not being able to make a turn. Now, a lot of the time, people will say, oh, they were going too fast or something like that. But actually, in most cases, it's because the rider simply doesn't know how to turn in that quickly. And I don't know either. If if I'm being totally honest with you, if I had to make a really sharp turn at speed, I wouldn't be able to do it confidently. Because I don't ride fast everywhere all the time. In fact, most of the time I'm riding pedestrian-like. I only ever go faster in a straight line. I never ever go faster around bends, just because I know that that can happen. I know the potential for that happening. And again, it's a very, very common occurrence. You see it so often, where riders, they don't know what to do when they're approaching a bend at speed, and so they put on their brakes, standing the bike up, but the only thing that happens is that they just go forward straight off the road instead of actually turning the bike. And in a lot of cases, you can make the turn, just apply a little bit of brake, so keep the bike standing up, apply a little bit of brake, but sharply, and then dart the bike in as quickly as you can. Now the way you can do that, and there's a very common technique, is instead of looking at the direction that you're going, look at the direction you want to go. And in a lot of cases, you'll be able to go in that direction. There's a specific name for it, I can't remember what it is, but you look in the direction that you want to go. It's like when you see a pothole in the road. Every single time you will hit the pothole because that is what you are looking at. As crazy as it sounds. But if you look to one side or the other side of the pothole, then you'll actually find yourself dodging them a lot more. And it's really interesting the way how the mind works. Even though you're seeing a hazard and you want to avoid it, so you keep your eyes pinned on the hazard, that's actually the opposite of what you should do. You should look in the direction you want to go, not the direction that you are going. And as well, if you are worried about sharp bends like I do, they're one of my biggest tips. We've done a video about this all on itself. The most important sign to look out for is chevrons. If you see chevron signs coming up towards a bend, then slow right down. Because then you know that it's a sharp bend. If you see chevrons coming up towards a bend and you don't slow yourself down, then you're just inviting trouble. Yeah? So if you see chevrons, slow right down, especially if you don't know the roads. But I do this even if I know the roads that I'm on. Because again, it's happened to me before, where I've just been able to make a bend because I wasn't able to turn in quickly enough. I wasn't looking at where I wanted to go, and I ignored the chevrons. The signs are all there, all you have to do is heed them. They will save you a lot of hassle in future, guys, trust me. So watch out for them chevrons, look the direction you want to go rather than the way you're going, and just be careful. Be careful. Maybe ride a little bit slower if you're not that confident in your own abilities. Like me, I'm not an expert rider by any means, but I ride within my own means. By doing that, it gives me loads of time to adjust for errors that I make, loads of time to adjust for driver errors, things like that. Things that you're not expecting. It's always a lot easier to correct yourself when you're going a little bit slower. And I know that's rubbish, I know it's sad, and I know that riders love to push their bikes, but I mean, when you're riding bikes like this, you can't ride it to its limits. You can't ride it anywhere near its limits on the street. It's almost impossible for the average rider. Yeah, and look, believe me, most of us are average riders, to say the least. Okay, you're not an expert. Leave it to the experts. If you're an aspiring expert, do it on the track. Do it on the track where it's safe and where you're supposed to do it. Don't do it on the streets. It's not worth it. Not to mention the speeding tickets and all that you will inevitably get if you ride like that. Hey, I get speeding tickets and I don't even ride all that aggressively. So, you know what I mean. I just need to check on my phone to remember what the the last one was. Got two more. I remember one of them, but I can't remember the other. Oh, of course! Dummy! Tank slappers! That's why I make notes on these videos, so I don't forget them, because I do forget. I forget more often than I care to admit. But yeah, this is a pretty obvious one as well, but tank slappers can be incredibly scary. Because again, a lot of these things, like always, are things that you have no control over. No control over whatsoever. A tank slapper, there's nothing you can do about it. And actually, if you try to correct it, in a lot of cases it will make the situation worse. So a little bit like when you are towing a caravan in a car and it starts going like this, sideways. The driver's instinct is always to correct it, but they just exacerbate the problem. They make it even worse. The caravan just starts swinging even more from side to side. The best thing you can do in that situation is slow down and keep the steering wheel straight. And that's exactly the same thing that you should do on a motorcycle. Slow down, the bike will correct itself. Don't try and counter steer, don't try and correct it. Just slow down. That's the only thing you need to do is slow yourself down and the bike will correct itself. Remember, you have a lot of the times enough momentum to keep the bike standing upright. And usually, I say this because most of the time whenever you see tank slappers happen, as scary as they are, the riders actually come out of it okay. Yeah, but you'll see a lot of the time like this, the handlebars going like that. And honestly, it's horrendous. It is horrendous. But yeah, if you just try and ride straight, just slow down, the tank slapper will actually correct itself. And I've seen videos in the past as well. This is we've seen them before on our reaction videos. Is that so someone will have one tank slapper, they'll be able to sort it out, they'll be able to correct it, but then they'll get another tank slapper just a little bit later on. And again, guys, I'm not being funny, but this happens when you're going fast, really fast. You can get tank slappers happen when you're going slower, but they're easier to control. And in a lot of cases, the really bad ones like this, the really ultra bad ones, are the ones where they're going over 100 miles an hour. And if you know that you're doing those speeds often, then one of the things you can do is install a steering damper. A steering damper, that's exactly what it's designed to do, is to keep the steering going straight. So it will torque itself up, it will tighten itself up when you're going faster, and it will loosen itself up when you're going slower. At least some of the modern ones, some of the electric ones, some of the ones that are already built in as a feature on modern bikes can do that. I think a lot of the time with aftermarket dampers is you set them and you leave them kind of thing. So it makes it incredibly hard to do slow speed maneuvers. But yeah, if that's the kind of riding that you do often, I mean, when you're going around bends and things, you're hardly turning the handlebars anyway. So it doesn't matter when you're going through corners at quite high speeds. But it's certainly one of those things to think about if you like riding like that. If that's your style of riding and that's the way how you like to ride, then it might be worth it, especially if you've experienced a tank slapper in the past as well, from the way how you like to ride. Then definitely worth looking at getting a steering damper. I don't know how much they cost because I've never looked at getting one myself. I've not needed to, but it's certainly one of those things to think about. I can't imagine that they cost all that much, and I don't think they're that hard to install either. But yeah, something to think about there. Alright guys, the last but certainly not least, and perhaps the most scary one and the most important one, is split-second distractions. Split-second distractions. You know what I mean by this, where you take your eyes off the road for not even a second, and then all of a sudden all the traffic in front of you has stopped and you're having a really hard time trying to slow the bike down enough to stop before the car in front of you. It's incredibly hard in that situation. It's happened to me before where I wasn't able to slow down. I tried, but there wasn't anything I could do other than go around the cars in front. And that's a split-second decision that you have to make. If you're keeping your eyes on the road already, then you don't have to worry about it. But it happens to the best of us. A split-second distraction can mean the difference between you having a really good day and a really, really bad day. Yeah, honestly, they are perhaps the most scary situation. Again, because you're not able to control it, you're not able to do anything about it. I was lucky. In my instance, my brain automatically thought braking isn't going to work. go around it in, like, honestly, a tenth of a second, even maybe less than that. Seriously, that's the decision-making process. The time that you have to make a decision is that, and a lot of the time it is totally instinctual. You don't even think about it, you just do it. And that kind of thing comes with experience and time. You know, when you get to know your bike and you know what its capabilities are, you know what your capabilities are, and then you're able to make really fine adjustments to situations like that make all the difference in the world. But yeah, guys, split-second decisions are an absolute, or split-second distractions rather, are an absolute killer, and have been the downfall of many riders in the past. Luckily, a lot of the time, riders will escape from the crashes that they're in because they're not actually going that fast. Because a lot of the time, it's happening not when you're on quiet roads, but when you're on busy roads. When you think the traffic is going to continue going, that's what you're expecting it to do, and then all of a sudden it just stops in front of you. And even if you've got 30 meters in front of you, where you're looking down like this, so you look up, oh my god, you know, it happens so quickly. And yeah, like I said, a lot of the time you're probably doing less than 40 miles an hour. It's madness, but it happens so often. You see it so often. It's crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. But yeah, guys and girls, I mean, that is the 5 scariest things that you can experience on a motorcycle, and I'm sure I've missed some. There are some other ones as well, I suppose. Some, I don't know, what could you, how could you call these? I don't know, honorable mentions. But things like leaning the bike too far over, doing power slides as well can also be pretty scary, and depending on your level of experience, even locking up the rear tire can be a pretty scary affair as well. And you know, doing overtakes can be pretty damn scary too. So you never know with these things, guys. There are loads of things loads of mistakes you can make as a rider. There you go, loads of sheep. But anyway, guys and girls, yeah, definitely, like I said earlier, let me know down in the comments the scariest things that you've experienced and the scariest things that you think happen to riders on motorcycles. Leave a like as always, hit subscribe, join us on Patreon, and we will catch you all in the next video. Thank you for joining me on today's ride. We'll catch you in the next one.